gotta go potty.
Hello and welcome back to the Darkling Chronicles. I am coming to you live and direct from my mum's house tonight. It's a beautiful evening. It's cool, which is actually very nice. Not that I will moan about the weather and the heat, but it's lovely to feel cool. And I'm joined by her dog Lukey, who is the most fluffy, gorgeous little thing. And when I'm here, he follows me around and I miss him so much. He's so cute. Anyway, we're going to start tonight's ghost stories with a story from Vikki. Now, Vikki has followed my page for a little while, and she sent me a story that I think is just brilliant. If you want to find it on my TikTok at the Darkling Chronicles, you can. It's called The Pinball Machine. So, this is what she says. Hi, so as promised, here's a story for you. When I was young, we lived in quite a strict house. We were told to read a book and rarely allowed to watch TV. Not that we wanted to watch the Grand Prix or war films anyway, lol. We weren't allowed out on the front to play with the other kids either. I used to spend most of my time sitting on an ottoman reading my favourite Enid Blyton books. Love her book, she's put in brackets. The sun would shine through the window onto the pages of Swallows and Amazons, and I'd be completely immersed, imagining I was one of the Secret Seven on an adventure to escape this prison I found myself in. I'd been reading for about an hour when I heard music coming from the closet in the corner of my room. It was faint, but definitely there. I went to investigate. There was nothing but clothes and an old pinball machine in there. The music had stopped, so I went back to my spot in the window. 20 minutes later, it started again. This time, it was loud. I got up, cautiously looked again, and the pinball machine was on. It was playing itself, lights, sounds, the lot. I ran out of my room and told my mum. She looked at me and said, "Vikki, that's impossible. It doesn't even have a plug on it." Totally freaked out, I begged her to come and have a look. She did, and sure enough, it was still playing. That same day, it was taped up in its box and put away in the attic. 10 years later, we moved out. That pinball machine was back out of its box, standing upright on its legs in the middle of the attic. Ooh, that story is just pure chills. Because how has that thing unboxed itself? It's a big pinball machine, and I have actually had confirmation that it is an arcade pinball machine. For a second, I wasn't sure if it was one of those little kids' ones. But this is a proper arcade pinball machine. First of all, I probably should have said, how is it playing without a plug on it? It hasn't got a plug to plug into the mains. That one is hard to explain, isn't it? That's always going to be hard to explain. But the fact that 10 years later it was out of the box in the middle of the attic. I'm assuming they didn't go into the attic much, because otherwise they probably would have noticed this a lot sooner. But it's a weird one. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. It's not an everyday situation, is it? This kind of stuff. Because she had this pinball machine in her wardrobe. I'm guessing it's one of those big, kind of like, big spaces that things get dumped in a little bit. But yeah, thank you so much, Vikki, for sending me this, because I love this story. It remains one of my favourites because it's so unexplainable. Yeah, it also has 2 people that witnessed it, so it gives it credit, and I love it. Now, this next story comes from a lady called Alice, and it's called The Cold on the Stairs. And she says, "Hi lovely, here's my ghost story. My grandma and granddad's house was perfectly normal until the day my grandma passed away. Within hours of her dying, something changed. The house became cold, specifically the bottom of the stairs, all the way to the top of the stairs, through all 3 bedrooms. I was about 11 when she passed, and I used to stay there every weekend since I was little. But after she died, it became a completely different place. Cold and eerie, like the air had thickened. It got to the point where no one wanted to go to the toilet alone. If we could, we'd go in pairs, If not, we'd sprint up the stairs, do what we needed to do, miss steps on the way back down, and wash our hands in the kitchen just to get away quicker. My granddad would laugh at us and call us daft, but we weren't imagining it. At night I had to sleep with the landing light on and my bedroom door ajar. Sometimes I'd share the bed with my auntie, and even then we would still feel Grandma's presence. Not in a peaceful way either. It felt heavy, like she was watching us. Years later, when I had kids of my own, they'd stay at my granddad's too. My eldest daughter, Sammy, was around 7 at the time, and she always said there was something on Grandad's stairs. One night Grandad asked her to go into his bedroom and grab some toilet roll. She went up and came straight back down saying, "Grandad, there's a lady in your bed," and she said, "Hello, Samantha." She'd never seen a photo of my grandma before, but when my mum and I showed her a picture, without saying anything, Sammy pointed straight at her and said, "That's the lady." She'd always said Grandad talked to someone in his bedroom about an hour each night and ended with, "Good night, love you." After that, Sammy would sit and talk to Grandma whenever she stayed. It became normal. But the day my granddad died, everything stopped. The house felt completely different, like it had been emptied. My uncle, who lived there still, said, "There's nothing here now." It's strange. Grandma was a lovely, warm, kind woman, so I'll never understand why upstairs felt like it did. But we all knew something was there. And Sammy, she saw her. There is so much of this story that I need to unpack. It's absolutely wild, isn't it? So first of all, if her grandma was lovely, kind and warm, you wouldn't expect the house to turn so dark when she died. It makes me feel like I've heard stories where something else has felt the grief of the family or the household, and because the granddad's talking to something, I've heard stories where an entity has come to the person who's grieving, such as the granddad, appearing as the person who died, and once they've kind of authorised them, I suppose, to keep coming back and given them that permission, they start to kind of like take over the energy of that person. And I mean, nothing's been said here about Grandad changing or becoming depressed or, seemingly having any kind of attachment. However, for the house to feel that dark, it feels like maybe something else stepped in that wasn't Grandma, that was kind of like mimicking her. I don't know. It's very odd for something, when someone's nice, for an atmosphere to feel that way. So that's the first thing I thought about the story when I heard it. And I hope that her granddad wasn't talking to anything sinister. It's interesting that Samantha spoke to her grandma. She must have had more conversations with her. I haven't actually got any clarity around that. But yeah, for the fact that this kind of feeling went when Grandad died and they're both gone, for the uncle to say it's peaceful, it's a very strange story. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. For it to be on the stairs as well, it's very specific, isn't it, to one area? Has anyone else experienced anything like this? Let me know, I'd love to have a chat with you. Now, my last ghost story comes from Tonia. Now, Tonia follows the page. She always sends me ghost stories and they're brilliant, and she always comments. I'm so grateful for her. I think she listens to the podcast. If you're listening, hi Tonia. This one you sent a little while back and it's called The Pool Room Sounds. Again, if you want to go watch it on TikTok, you can, at the Darkling Chronicles. Give us a follow. It really supports the page and the algorithms and all that jazz. I really appreciate it. So, Tonia says, "Hi hun, where do I start? When I was young, my parents used to run a pub. Loads of strange things would happen. My bedroom was just next to what used to be the pool room. I say used to because the pub's still open to this day, but the inside's been rearranged. Anyway, my bedroom was near the entrance to the old pool room, which you could get to from the flat above the pub. And loads of nights in the early hours of the morning, I'd wake up to the sound of someone playing pool. Not just odd sounds, full-on pool balls clacking, cues tapping, like someone properly having a game. At first it scared me. I'd hide under the duvets and just hope it would stop. But as time went on, I got used to it. I started sneaking to the door and peeking through the gap, trying to catch someone in the act, but I never saw anyone, just the sounds, like the pub was open again after hours. One night I saw a man walk past one of the frosted glass windows. The pub was shut. Mum was totting up the till after a busy night. I asked if someone had stayed behind because it looked like one of the regulars, Chris, who sometimes did stick around after close for a chat with my dad. She said no, everyone had left. I thought it was weird but didn't say much. A few minutes later, my dad came into the room and started chatting with us, and suddenly stopped mid-sentence and asked, "Is Chris still here?" Mum looked at us both and went, "What is wrong with you two? No, everyone's gone." Turns out my dad had seen the same thing I did. He went and grabbed my older brother and they checked the whole pub and flat just in case. But there was no one, just us as a family. It still freaks me out to this day, and that sound of the pool balls never really stopped either. Now, my first thought when I read this story, and I think someone else commented on this as well on TikTok, was that this regular Chris had actually died and no one knew yet, and he was obviously appearing in the pub. However, turns out that was a wrong theory. Chris is still alive and kicking, and it wasn't Chris they saw in the pub. So, what we need to know now is there a mimic in there that is mimicking Chris because it knows that they feel safe around him? Or is it something else? I think that's probably the clearest explanation I can think of to make this make sense. Let me know what you think in the comments, because I'd love to chat about it. But the fact that both her and her dad saw it is just gold, isn't it? It's just gold. So was it this entity that's playing with the pool balls? Probably, I would say so. And what is he doing there? I love that this is still open today, this pub. It makes it really interesting. I'd love to know if it's still haunted, but obviously I don't know the name of it, so that's sad times, isn't it? But thank you again to Tonia for sending this to me. She sent me some cracking stories, but that's all I've got time for right now. If you have your own ghost story or a weird time slip or a paranormal experience that you can't explain, please email me, the Darkling Chronicles 25@gmail.com, or you can send me a message on TikTok at the Darkling Chronicles. You can click my page, click message, send me your story that way. I love reading your stories, and I think it's really important that we share ghost stories because you might be able to validate someone else's experience. You might be able to make them feel like they're not going crazy, and I think that is important. So if you can, please follow me on Spotify. If you have Apple, you can follow me here too, and also on YouTube. I'd be so grateful for the support. This page is still small, but I've had 100 streams and downloads. I've just got told today, and that's really exciting for me because I commit to do this every single week and I love it. And to know that it's growing is a really good feeling. So thank you to everyone who's following already. As usual, make sure you take care of yourself, and I will speak to you next time.